My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, screen lighting up with a name I hadn't seen in a decade. Mother. I ignored it. A minute later, it buzzed again. I let it go to voicemail. The third time, my husband, Sebastian, looked over from the table where he was sketching out a floor plan. "You gonna get that?" he asked, not needing to see the screen to know who it was. After 10 years of silence, a sudden flurry of calls could only mean one thing. When it rang a fourth time, I sighed and wiped my hands on a dish towel. I tapped the green icon, a strange sense of detachment washing over me. "Hello?" Silence. Then a strained, unfamiliar version of my mother's voice. "Sloan, is that you?" "My name is Sloan. I'm 34 years old, and for the last 10 years, my family has treated me like I'm dead. The day they disowned me is burned into my memory with perfect, painful clarity." I was 24, standing in their pristine white living room, my hand held tightly in Sebastian's. We had just told them we were married. We'd done it at the courthouse that morning, just the two of us. It was all we could afford and all we wanted. My father, John, who was 59 now but looked every bit the part of the arrogant patriarch then, stared at Sebastian's hands. "You're marrying a man with dirt under his fingernails," he'd said, his voice dripping with disdain. Sebastian, who was 25 at the time, had just finished a 16-hour shift managing a construction crew. He was building a life for us, and all my father saw was grime. My mother, Cecilia, now 56, was somehow worse. She didn't yell. She just looked at me with a chilling disappointment that cut deeper than any shout. "You had so much potential, Sloan. A good education, the right connections, and you're throwing it all away for this." She gestured vaguely at Sebastian, as if he were a piece of furniture she found distasteful. The message was clear. I had chosen love over status, and in their world, that was an unforgivable sin. They cut the cord. No more phone calls, no more holidays. I wasn't invited to Christmas. I found out my grandmother had passed away from a cousin a week after the funeral. 2 years later, my sister Kendall, who is 2 years younger than me, got married. She was 32 now, the family's forever golden child. Her wedding was the polar opposite of mine. We saw the pictures on social media. Kendall in a Vera Wang gown, a string quartet playing in a historic ballroom. My parents paid for all of it. The designer dress, the $1,000 a plate dinner, the lavish honeymoon in Italy. Their wedding gift was the down payment on a sprawling 5-bedroom house in a gated community, the kind of place with manicured lawns and a 2-year wait list for the local country club. For the next decade, they pretended I didn't exist. Kendall sent me a birth announcement for her first child, but the return address was my parents' house, a clear signal that I wasn't welcome at hers. Meanwhile, Sebastian and I built our life from scratch. Those first few years were hard. We lived in a tiny 1-bedroom apartment over a laundromat that always smelled like damp clothes. We shared a beat-up sedan that broke down every other month. I worked a full-time job while taking night classes to get my business degree, and Sebastian poured every spare dollar and ounce of energy into starting his own property management company. We ate a lot of instant noodles and measured our success in small victories. The first time we could pay all our bills without panicking, the day Sebastian hired his first employee, the moment we finally signed the lease on a decent office space. Slowly, painstakingly, we climbed. Sebastian's company thrived. His reputation for being honest and hardworking, the very things my father scorned, made him successful. We bought our own house, then a second as an investment property. We traveled. We built a life that was stable, happy, and entirely our own, a life they knew nothing about. And then the phone rang, 10 years of silence broken by a single desperate call, and suddenly they remembered I existed. "What did she want?" Sebastian asked, his pen still poised over the blueprint. He already knew the answer wasn't going to be a simple, "hello." "She wants me to come over," I said, setting the phone down. A family matter. Sebastian's jaw tightened. No, absolutely not. After 10 years of nothing, they don't get to summon you. I know, I said, leaning against the counter, but I think I have to go. He looked up, his expression a mixture of concern and disbelief. Why? What could you possibly owe them? Nothing, I admitted. I owe them nothing, but this isn't for them. It's for me. For a decade, I've wondered what it would take for them to break their silence. An apology, a medical emergency. I have to know what this is. It's curiosity, that's all. He studied my face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, but I'm going with you. No, I said firmly. I need to do this alone. They made their feelings about you clear a long time ago. Walking in there with you by my side would just give them an excuse to turn this into the same old argument. I want to hear what they have to say, without distractions. He didn't like it, but he understood. 2 days later, I pulled my car up to the curb in front of the house I grew up in. It was exactly as I remembered, a perfectly preserved colonial with aggressively symmetrical hedges and a lawn that looked like a green carpet. Taking a deep breath, I walked up the stone path and rang the bell. My mother opened the door. She looked older, the lines around her mouth deeper, but she wore the same strained, polite smile. Sloan, you came. You called, I replied, stepping into the foyer. The air inside was cool and smelled faintly of lemon polish and old money. Nothing had changed. The same landscape paintings hung on the walls, the same antique grandfather clock ticked solemnly in the corner. It was like walking into a museum of my own unhappy childhood. My father was in the living room, standing by the fireplace. He gave me a stiff nod. Sloan. John, I said, matching his tone. The three of us sat in the formal living room, the same room where they had pronounced my marriage a catastrophic failure. The silence was thick and suffocating. Cecilia offered me tea, which I declined. My father cleared his throat. I suppose you're wondering why we asked you here, he began, as if this were a business meeting. The thought had crossed my mind, I said, keeping my voice even. Cecilia jumped in, her composure already starting to fray. It's about Kendall. Of course it was. She and Riley they're having some financial difficulties. Difficulties? I repeated. My father sighed, annoyed at having to spell it out. Riley's position was eliminated, corporate restructuring. It was months ago, but they didn't tell us. They've been trying to manage, but they've fallen behind. Behind on what? I asked, though I was starting to see the picture form with sickening clarity. My mother's eyes darted around the room, landing on everything but me. The mortgage, she whispered. They're several months behind. The bank is foreclosing. They have to be out in a few weeks. I just sat there, letting the words hang in the air. I thought of Kendall's Instagram feed, a curated gallery of perfection, family ski trips to Aspen, designer outfits for her 2 kids, a smiling anniversary post from a Michelin star restaurant just last month. A complete fabrication, paid for with money they didn't have. I felt a cold, hard knot form in my stomach. It wasn't pity. Cecilia seemed to take my silence as a sign of sympathy. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush. We've done all we can. We've drained our savings to help them keep up appearances, but it's not enough. The hole is too deep. Finally, she reached for a glossy flyer on the coffee table and pushed it across to me. It was a real estate brochure, the kind printed on heavy cardstock. On the front was a picture of a beautiful, sprawling house under a sunny sky. Kendall's house, the one they had helped her buy. You're their only hope now, Sloan, she said, her voice trembling with manufactured desperation. You and Sebastian have done well for yourselves. We know that. This is what family is for. I picked up the flyer, my fingers tracing the outline of the roof. I looked from the photo of the house to my mother's pleading face, then to my father's resentful one. All those years of being the forgotten daughter, the failure, the cautionary tale, and now here they were, handing me the keys to their golden child's kingdom and begging me to save it. A slow smile spread across my face. I met my mother's gaze. "This house?" I said, my voice quiet but clear. "You should have led with that." I drove home in a daze, my mother's desperate words echoing in my ears. I didn't feel pity or triumph, just a strange, chilling clarity. For 10 years, they had measured my worth in dollars and cents and found me lacking. Now their entire world was collapsing, and they were turning to me to write the check. My mind drifted back to the early days with Sebastian. I remembered him at our tiny kitchen table at 2 a.m., surrounded by stacks of invoices and legal pads filled with frantic calculations. He was 27 then, running his fledgling property management business out of our spare closet. He'd leave before sunrise to fix a tenant's leaky faucet himself and come home long after dark, smelling like paint thinner and exhaustion, only to start on the paperwork. He built his company brick by brick, handshake by handshake. There were no handouts, no trust funds, no daddies to call for a bailout. Our first real celebration wasn't a fancy dinner, but the night we realized we could afford to buy brand name coffee instead of the generic stuff in the giant tin can. That was success. When I walked through our front door, Sebastian was waiting. He took one look at my face and knew. "It's bad, isn't it?" I tossed the glossy real estate flyer onto the island. "Kendall's losing the house. Foreclosure." He picked it up, his expression unreadable. "And they want you to save it." It wasn't a question. "They want us to save it," I corrected. "They want the man with dirt under his fingernails to clean up their mess." A muscle worked in his jaw. "Tell me you told them to go to hell." "I told them nothing," I said, my voice low and steady. A plan was beginning to form, sharp and cold and perfect. "But I have an idea, and I need you to be on board." I explained it to him, every detail. He listened, his initial anger slowly morphing into a look of stunned admiration. The next morning, I was in a downtown coffee shop with my best friend Talia. We'd met in a business law class a decade ago, and she was now a partner at a corporate law firm. She was sharp, loyal, and the only person besides Sebastian who knew the full, ugly history with my family. I slid the foreclosure notice across the table. Talia scanned it, her eyebrows rising higher with every line. "Wow," she breathed. "The golden child has fallen. So what's the play? You thinking of helping them out with a loan?" "I can draw up a contract that would protect you." "I'm not giving them a loan," I said. "I'm buying the house." Talia blinked. "You're... what?" "Sloan, are you sure you want to get entangled in this? This is messy." "It's been messy for 10 years, Tal. This is just the first time I have the advantage." She saw the look in my eyes and her expression shifted from concerned friend to shrewd lawyer. "Okay, if you're going to do this, we do it right. No direct contact. We'll set up a shell LLC and buy it through a proxy. They'll never know it's you until you want them to." That afternoon, Sebastian made a call to his go-to real estate agent, Omar Peters. Omar was a shark, the best in the business at navigating complex, time-sensitive deals. We met him at his office. "A pre-foreclosure cash purchase," Omar said, leaning back in his chair after we laid out the situation. "The bank will love it. They'd rather take a guaranteed cash offer now than risk the uncertainty of an auction. We can move fast. The timeline is tight, but it's doable." He looked at me. "You understand that once you own it, you're the landlord? You'll have to evict your own sister if she doesn't leave." I understand, I said, my voice betraying no emotion. The next few days were a blur of paperwork and wire transfers. Talia handled the legal structure, setting up an anonymous LLC with a generic name. Omar's team engaged the bank directly, presenting an aggressive, all-cash offer that was just under market value, but too good for a desperate lender to refuse. It all happened with brutal, silent efficiency. My parents called twice, asking for an update. I let both calls go to voicemail. A week later, a courier delivered a thick envelope to our house. I signed for it and carried it into the kitchen, my hands trembling slightly. Inside was a stack of documents, and on top, the grant deed. My name wasn't on it, but the name of the LLC Talia had created was. Our LLC. Sebastian came and stood behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. He rested his chin on my shoulder, looking down at the paper. It was done. The house was ours. I held the deed up, the paper crisp and heavy in my hands. It felt like a weapon. It felt like justice. Let's see if blood is still thicker than contracts, I whispered. I let them stew in silence for another 48 hours. The deed sat in my home office, a silent testament to the power shift that was about to take place. Then I picked up my phone and called my mother. Sloan, finally, Cecilia answered, her voice a mix of relief and irritation. We've been waiting to hear from you. Have you thought about it? About helping Kendall? I have, I said, my tone deliberately neutral. I'd like to meet, all of us, you, Dad, and Kendall. There's a location that holds some meaning for us. I'll text you the address. Saturday at noon. Meaning for us? She repeated, confused. Is it your house? We've never been. The condescension was subtle, but it was there. The unspoken assumption that my home was a modest, forgettable place. You'll see, I said, and hung up before she could ask more questions. On Saturday, Sebastian and I drove over first. We parked a street away and walked, approaching the house from the side. It was even more imposing up close. A brick facade, professionally landscaped gardens, a 3-car garage, the American dream, built on a foundation of debt and lies. I had a key now, provided by the bank's agent. The click of the lock turning felt momentous. We stepped inside. The air was still, filled with the scent of Kendall's expensive floral diffusers. We didn't touch anything. We just waited. At precisely noon, a luxury SUV pulled into the driveway. My parents got out, dressed in their weekend best, cashmere and crisp chinos. Kendall emerged from the back seat, looking pale and drawn, her designer handbag clutched like a shield. They walked up the path, their expressions a mixture of confusion and apprehension. My mother saw me through the glass panels of the front door, and her face flooded with relief. "Oh, thank God," she mouthed. I opened the door. "Come in." They stepped into the grand foyer, their eyes darting around. "Sloan, what is this?" my father demanded. "Why did you have us meet here?" "I thought it was appropriate," I said calmly. Kendall looked from me to her parents, a flicker of hope in her eyes. Did you do it? Did you pay the bank?" My mother rushed forward and grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "Oh, Sloan, I knew you'd do the right thing. I knew you wouldn't let your own sister be thrown out onto the street. Family is family, after all." They were practically giddy with relief. The tension melted from their shoulders, replaced by a wave of magnanimous gratitude. They thought I had simply paid off the arrears, a generous but expected family favor. They saw me as their savior, the prodigal daughter returning to the fold with her checkbook open. "Thank you," Kendall whispered, the words sounding foreign on her tongue. It was a forced, brittle thank you, the kind you give when you've been forced to accept help from someone you consider beneath you. "We can work out a payment plan, of course," my father said gruffly, already reasserting his authority. We'll make sure you're paid back. With interest, if you like. I let them talk, letting the scene play out. I watched them walk through the living room, touching the furniture, reclaiming the space they believed was rightfully theirs. They were so sure of the world, so certain of their place in it, and of mine. Let's all sit down, I said, gesturing toward the formal dining room. Sebastian stood quietly by the window, a silent observer to the whole charade. We sat at the enormous mahogany table where Kendall had probably hosted countless dinner parties. My parents beamed at me. Kendall managed a weak smile. They were waiting for me to lay out the terms of my generosity. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick manila envelope. I slid it onto the polished surface of the table. It landed with a soft, definitive thud. A beat of silence. Kendall looked at the envelope, then at me. What's that? The paperwork from the bank? My mother guessed. My father, ever the pragmatist, reached for it. He opened the clasp and pulled out the stack of documents. He scanned the top page, his brow furrowed in confusion. He flipped to the next page, then the next. The color drained from his face. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. This is a grant deed. That's right, I said. The buyer is some company, SJ Holdings LLC. He trailed off, the gears turning in his head. SJ Sloan and Sebastian James. He looked from the paper to me, then to Sebastian and back again. The dawning horror on his face was everything I had imagined. Is this a gift? John asked, his voice barely a whisper. I leaned forward, my hands clasped on the table. I met his gaze and held it, letting the full weight of the moment land. No, I said, my voice clear and cold. It's mine now. The silence in the room was absolute. My father stared at the deed as if it were a venomous snake. My mother's jaw was slack, her eyes wide with uncomprehending shock. Kendall just looked back and forth between us, her face a mask of confusion. Yours? Kendall finally choked out. What do you mean it's yours? I mean I own it, I said, my voice devoid of any emotion. The bank was selling, I bought it. This house, the land, the ridiculously oversized mailbox, it all belongs to me now. You can't do this, Kendall stammered, shaking her head in denial. This is my home. It was your home, I corrected gently. Until you stopped paying the mortgage, now it's my asset. My mother found her voice, a high, reedy sound. Sloan, this is a joke. A cruel, twisted joke. You did this to help us, to help your sister. I did this as an investment, I said, pulling another document from my bag. It was a standard residential lease agreement drafted by Talia. I slid it across the table toward Kendall. But I'm not heartless. I'm willing to let you stay, as tenants. Kendall stared at the lease as if I'd offered her poison. My father snatched it up, his eyes scanning the terms. His face grew darker with every line he read. This is outrageous, he boomed, slamming the papers down on the table. The rent is higher than the mortgage was. A 3-month security deposit, quarterly property inspections. It's market rate for a property of this size in this neighborhood, I replied calmly. Sebastian, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. His presence was a solid, unmovable wall behind me. The terms are non-negotiable, Sebastian said, his voice quiet but firm. The first month's rent and the security deposit are due in 5 business days. If not, you'll have 30 days to vacate the premises as per state law. Kendall finally exploded. Tears of rage and disbelief streamed down her face. You snake, she shrieked at me. You did this on purpose. You wanted to humiliate me. You've always been jealous of me, of everything I have. What is it you have, Kendall? I asked, my voice dangerously soft. A mountain of debt? A husband who lies to you about his job? A life funded by our parents' retirement savings? Tell me, what part of that am I supposed to be jealous of? The barb hit its mark. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. Cecilia turned on me, her shock curdling into fury. This is revenge, Sloane. After all these years, you're doing this out of spite. No, Mother, I said, standing up. It's called boundaries. You're the ones who taught me the rules. You always told me family doesn't entitle anyone to a free ride. You said success is earned, not given. I'm just following the principles you raised me with. I earned this. Kendall didn't. I looked directly at my father. You judged my husband for having dirt under his fingernails. Well, that dirt built an empire you couldn't even fathom, while your son-in-law in his corner office was running this family into the ground. It turns out you backed the wrong horse. My father's face was purple with rage. He was speechless, a state so foreign to him that it was almost comical. Kendall shoved her chair back and stormed out of the room, sobbing hysterically. We heard the front door slam moments later. Cecilia's face crumpled, the mask of the society matron finally cracking to reveal the terrified woman underneath. She looked from me to my father, as if hoping he would fix this, but he was frozen in his chair, staring at me. He finally spoke, his voice a low, guttural mutter. "You're not my daughter." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "You made that perfectly clear 10 years ago. I'm just your new landlord." I picked up my bag and walked toward the door, Sebastian right behind me. We stepped out into the bright afternoon sun, leaving them sitting in the wreckage of their perfect world in a house that was no longer theirs. The air outside felt clean, fresh. As we walked away, I didn't look back. The fallout didn't start with a bang, but with a whisper. A small article tucked away in the business section of the local paper, noting the private sale of a prominent property in foreclosure. It named the address. Anyone in my parents' social circle would know exactly whose house it was. Then, a week later, court filings became public. One of Riley's former business partners was suing him for a significant amount of unpaid debt, and the lawsuit mentioned his recent unemployment and loss of primary residence. The whispers became a roar. In a world built on the illusion of effortless wealth and stability, the public exposure of their financial ruin was social death. Kendall's phone stopped ringing. Friends who had eagerly attended her lavish parties were suddenly unavailable for coffee. The carpool invitations for her kids dried up. She was no longer an asset in their carefully curated social network. She was a liability, a cautionary tale. The schadenfreude from their circle was a bitter pill, and my family was forced to swallow it. Predictably, my mother called. It was a Tuesday evening. I was reviewing quarterly reports for our company when her name flashed on my screen. "I need you to be more discreet," she said, skipping any pretense of a greeting. "Discreet?" I asked, leaning back in my chair. "I haven't said a word to anyone." "This leaseback arrangement, it's unseemly, Sloane. People are talking. It's embarrassing for the family, for Kendall." "Kendall's financial irresponsibility is what's embarrassing, Mother. I just protected my investment." Her voice dropped, becoming wheedling. "Can't you just lower the rent?" "Just for a little while until they get back on their feet. Riley is looking for work. It's the compassionate thing to do." "Compassion is a two-way street," I said, my voice flat. "And for the last 10 years, my side of the street has been empty. The rent is due on the 1st of the month." I hung up. The victory felt sharp, but it left a strange, metallic taste in my mouth. I met Talia for drinks that Friday. I told her about the phone call, about the news spreading. She swirled the ice in her glass, her expression serious. "You've won, Sloane. You hold all the cards. You flipped the board on them and they have no moves left. But you need to understand that this level of payback changes things. It changes you. You drew a line and burned the bridge behind you. You just have to make peace with what that cost." Her words stuck with me. Driving home, I felt a familiar pang of something I couldn't quite name. It wasn't exactly guilt, but it was close. It was the ghost of the daughter I used to be, the one who would have done anything for a scrap of their approval. Had I become as cold and transactional as they were? That weekend, I was cleaning out the back of my closet, a task I'd been putting off for years. I found an old shoebox filled with memorabilia from my childhood, report cards, faded photographs, a few silly drawings. Tucked at the very bottom was a folded, yellowing piece of notebook paper. My handwriting was a childish scrawl. I was 10 years old. Dear Mom and Dad, I'm sorry I was sad at Kendall's birthday party. I didn't mean to be. It was a great party. The pony was really cool. I just felt left out when everyone was opening presents and I had to sit in my room because you said my attitude was bad. I will try to have a better attitude next time. I love you. Please, can you not be mad at me anymore? Love, Sloan. I sank down onto the floor, the letter trembling in my hands. I remembered that day with perfect, searing clarity. Kendall's 10th birthday bash, complete with a rented pony and half the 4th grade. I had been upset because my parents had forgotten to invite my one and only best friend. When I'd started to cry, my mother had quietly told me not to make a scene and sent me to my room for the rest of the party. I stared at the desperate, pleading words of that little girl. A girl who had spent her entire life trying to earn a love that was freely and lavishly given to her sister. All the guilt, all the doubt I'd been feeling evaporated in that moment, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. I hadn't started this war. I was just finally, definitively ending it. I had come full circle. The first rent check arrived on the last possible day, a personal check from my mother's account. It was a silent, resentful admission of defeat. For 3 weeks, an uneasy quiet settled over us. Then the final piece of their carefully constructed life fell away. It happened on a Thursday night. The doorbell rang long after dark, a frantic, insistent peal. Sebastian and I exchanged a look. I opened the door to find my sister standing on our porch, illuminated by the soft glow of the porch light. She was a wreck. Her mascara was smeared, her hair was a mess, and she was wearing a wrinkled silk blouse that looked like she'd slept in it. "He's gone," she said, her voice raw. "Kendall, what are you talking about?" "Riley," she spat, the name like poison. "He packed a bag and left. He said this was all my fault, your fault. He said he couldn't live with the humiliation." She pushed past me into the foyer. "He's leaving me with all of it. The lawsuit, the credit card bills, all of it." I stood there, watching her pace my living room, her hands twisting in front of her. I waited for an apology, for a moment of self-awareness, for any sign that she understood her role in this catastrophe. It never came. She finally stopped and whirled on me, her eyes blazing with a familiar, misplaced fury. "You did this. You planned this from the beginning. You saw a chance to ruin my life and you took it. You're a calculating, jealous bitch." Sebastian took a step forward, but I put a hand on his arm, stopping him. This was between me and her. "No, Kendall," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "You ruined your own life. You and Riley spent a decade living beyond your means, pretending to be something you weren't. You built a house of cards and you're angry at me because I'm the one who finally turned on a fan." "We were happy," she cried. "Were you? Were you happy when your husband was hiding his termination notice from you? Were you happy while he was racking up secret debt? That's not happiness, Kendall. That's an illusion." I took a step closer, my voice dropping. "The difference between you and me is that you were raised on love bought with conditions. Everything was a transaction. Good grades got you a car. The right boyfriend got you approval. A perfect wedding got you a house. I built a life without strings. Sebastian and I built it with our own hands, with nothing but each other. It might not be as shiny as yours was, but it's real. And it's ours. Her face hardened. The victimhood settled back over her like a shroud. You'll never understand. You're right, I'll never understand how you can stand there in the middle of a disaster you created and still find a way to blame anyone but yourself. I took a deep breath. It was time. Speaking of which, I think it's best for everyone if we make a clean break. I'm giving you your 30-day notice. The lease expires at the end of next month, and I won't be renewing it. The color drained from her face. For the first time, the raw panic in her eyes was real. What? No, you can't. Where are we supposed to go? That's not my problem to solve. Her composure shattered completely. The anger was gone, replaced by a desperate, primal fear. Please, Sloane, she begged, her voice cracking. Not for me, for the kids. They love that house. It's their home. Don't do this to them. For a split second, I hesitated. I pictured my niece and nephew, two innocent children caught in the crossfire. A wave of something heavy and painful washed over me. But then I saw my mother's face, my father's dismissive sneer. I remembered the 10 years of silence. This wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about a line that, if I let them cross it now, they would cross forever. I hardened my heart. No, Kendall, a line is a line. I walked to the front door and opened it. She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing, but no words came out. Defeated, she turned and walked out into the night. I closed the door, the click of the latch echoing in the silent house. The strength that had held me up for the last hour vanished, and my legs gave out. I collapsed against the door, burying my face in my hands as a racking sob tore through me. Sebastian was there in an instant, his arms wrapping around me, holding me up. He held me tight as I cried, not for her, but for the wreckage of it all. Why doesn't winning feel better? I whispered into his chest. A few months have passed since that night. The autumn air is crisp now, and Sebastian and I are walking through a newly acquired commercial property, a dusty warehouse that smells like concrete and potential. Our company has expanded, taking on 2 new buildings in the last quarter. Sebastian points out where the new offices will go, his voice filled with the easy confidence of a man who builds things that last. I watch him, and a sense of quiet contentment settles over me. This is real. This is ours. Talia called me last week with an update. Kendall and her kids moved out of the house on the last day of the month. There was no drama, no final confrontation, just a moving truck and a key left on the kitchen counter. Talia said she'd found a small 2-bedroom condo to rent in a less prestigious part of town. My parents, having drained their own finances to prop up Kendall's charade, sold their big colonial house and moved in with her. The 3 of them, rattling around in a small space, bound together by their shared resentment of me. They still aren't speaking to me. I'm not sure they ever will. I kept the deed to Kendall's old house. It sits in a file in my office drawer, a crisp, legal reminder of the battle I won. We had the locks changed and hired a cleaning crew to erase the last traces of my sister's life there. Sebastian's company now manages it as a high-end rental property. A new family lives there, with no knowledge of the ghosts in its walls. Tonight, I'm sitting in my office, the city lights twinkling outside my window. I've thought a lot about what I did, trying to untangle the knot of emotions it left behind. Revenge tastes sharp. It's not sweet, like they say in the movies. It's bitter and metallic, and it gets in your blood. It made me powerful, yes. It gave me the control I never had as a child, the validation I'd stopped seeking but secretly still craved. But it also carved something out of me, leaving an empty space where a sister and parents used to be. It made me, not them, but someone new, someone who understands that sometimes the only way to heal is to cauterize the wound. My phone buzzes on the desk. A new voicemail. I tap the screen and lift it to my ear. It's Cecilia. Her voice is different, softer, stripped of its usual authority. It's the voice of a woman who has lost everything. Sloane, she begins, her voice wavering slightly. We were just sitting here, talking. If you ever want to talk, we're here. The message ends. The silence that follows is heavy with everything left unsaid. 10 years ago, I would have wept with relief to hear those words. I would have called back instantly, ready to forgive, ready to accept any crumb of affection she was willing to offer. But I am not that person anymore. I hold my thumb over the screen, hovering above the red trash icon. I think of the little girl with the pony party letter, of the young woman standing in the living room being told she wasn't good enough, of the decade of holidays spent alone. I press delete. Then, I stand up, walk over to the large window, and slide it open. A cool breeze blows in, fresh and clean, clearing the stale air from the room. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I can finally breathe.